Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Good. How are you doing today? Good. Okay. So we continue actually with our contents on supply chain innovation. With respect to the workshop, yeah, we will dedicate some time to it today, as we wrote to you via mail. So we will start it, and then you have to continue working on it outside the classroom. Okay. Yeah. So we will finish this part with respect to some tools also about supply chain innovation. And then we will deal with business model innovation, supply chain innovation. So it is a preliminary, let's say, theoretical introduction to the workshop, and then I will tell you exactly what's the workshop. And this is the program of today. So we have many things to do today. And yeah, let's start. So what did we do last time? Last time we have discussed some of the principles, how to improve processes in the supply chain. What are the principles that are out there that can enable us to improve the processes in the supply chain in a systematic way. And we did the so-called transformational or the transformational principles, and then we have done also the more exploitative principles, which are here on the slide. Perhaps a short, I would like to remind you a bit what the heuristics are. I told you that we should have them in mind. The heuristics for transformational supply chain innovation and the process. So what is the first one? So the first one is capture information at the source once and at the source. Okay. Right? So this is an important principle, and then we have seen how Ford has done it. Well, once they would like to send the purchasing order to their suppliers, they capture that purchasing order directly in a database. So capture information once and at the source because it will increase accessibility of the information, right, from all the departments of the company. Now, the second one is subsume information processing work or related work into the real world. Okay. Subsume information processing work into the real work. And we have seen this receiving department. The receiving department does not only just get the products and then fill out the receiving document, but once they receive the document, they receive the goods, they will check whether the goods that have been received, they are matching with the purchasing order. So this is very relevant one. Then we have push the work to the actor that has incentive to do it. Right? And then VMI and scan-based trading are examples of this. Who has interest in doing the work? We should identify it and then push the work on that department, on the supplier, on the individual, whatever. And then put the decision point in the real world and with controls or process controls. Okay? So we would like here to empower others so that the one that is, let's say, expressing certain requirements with respect to equipment is the one that at the end also order that equipment from the supplier. So this is about empowerment. Okay. So these are important heuristics. Why I am putting them once again on the board? Because they are so relevant and they can be part of the exam. So don't tell me, okay, we forgot them. No, we have to know them. So it's like this here. If you don't know them, you will not be able to apply them. We have to know them. Okay? So they are not very much, they are not many, but they are relevant and we should apply them whenever there is an opportunity for it. Good. And then we have been looking at the heuristics for generating incremental supply chain innovation. We categorize them according to the heuristics at the task level, at the work level, and then at the process level. We did the ones at the task level, task elimination, composition, decomposition, triage. Then we have at the flow level, resequencing and parallelism enhancement. We have also discussed many examples that show how these are used. Then at the process level, and this is where we arrived last time, specialization and standardization, we have done them already. Resource optimization, we have done it also, and then we will do now communication optimization and automation. Okay. Okay, perhaps with respect to resource optimization, just a short reminder. Yeah, we have talked about the chaining and batching. Yeah, chaining is, this is how to optimize resources. So what we would like to do here is to avoid setups. Yeah, setups, they are idle times when people do not work because they are changing from one task to another, or when a machine is changing from one product to another, and we would like to reduce these setup times. What are the ways, the approaches that we have in order to reduce the setups or to avoid them altogether is to chain or to batch. To chain tasks in order to batch them, right? Yeah, chaining, I told you, is that perhaps many tasks at the same time for one individual for one product, and batching is that you are making for each task, or you are batching all the goods or the documents or the applications. And I gave you a very, very intuitive example, is the exam correction. Chaining is then, I use it when I'm correcting the entire exam, exercise 1, then 2, and 3, and 4 for each student. So for each student, I'm correcting all exercises. Or I'm doing batching is that when I'm correcting one exercise for the whole class, right? And then this is batching. And then I go to exercise 2 and correct exercise 2 for the entire class, etc. So this is resource optimization. And yeah, you have here some examples. So resource integration. So you may share resources across different types of claims. Let's say here we have insurance processes. Let's say you're using the same resources for motor insurance or vehicle insurance, and are using also the same resources for personal insurance, right? So for life insurance, for example. So this is some way how you integrate resources and optimize the use of your resources. And then we have batching. For example, claims handling process. Batch all claims for a given geographic area and assign them to the same resource. For example, again, here it could be an insurance. It's a service supply chain. You get claims from different geographical areas, and then you batch them by geographical area. Let's say those coming from Milan, those coming from Turin, those coming from Rome, and then you assign all of these claims. I mean, those from Milan for one single resource, those from Turin for one single resource. And this way you are batching, let's say, the claims among different geographical areas. So this is resource optimization, and then let's look at communication optimization. Yeah, we have also to optimize communication where we are dealing with supply chain processes. We have here a couple of ways how to do it. Optimize number of interactions. Gather sufficient information to get to the next milestone. I will get back here afterwards. What does it mean? Because we will see two types of interactions. Before that, we have to make the distinction between synchronous and asynchronous interaction. So for synchronous interactions, perhaps you can use it to resolve minor defects. Say, I don't know, for example, you have a technician outside at the client, and that technician should repair the machine at the client. And you can use a synchronous interaction, for example, by using phone call or by using video call, just to coordinate between the technician on site at the client and the back office, right? So, for example, in order to get some help, in order to repair certain equipment, you can get them by phone. But for certain serious problems, major defects, asynchronous interaction is better, right? Is more suitable, more appropriate here. So you may not be able to just call your colleague at the back office and then you will get the information. What you should do is that you have to just send an email or send the documents to the back office, and then the back office will have enough time in order to think about the problem, and then we'll send the solution, right, or how to proceed in order to come up with a solution to the problem. Then we have also to optimize the timing for interactions. We have front-loaded processes and back-loaded processes. Yeah, perhaps the naming is new to you, the naming front-loaded processes and back-loaded processes, but this is something that many of us use intuitively, right? What is a front-loaded process? It's bulk of information, exchange and processing happens up front. Yeah, let's say for getting a bank loan, a bank credit, you may have to submit all the documents required upfront. Right? And once you submit them upfront, the bank can start with reviewing your documents. Yeah, very simple. Front-loaded processes, you may use it also in the kitchen. How may you use this in the kitchen? For example, let's say you have a restaurant and you would like to do all your work in the restaurant very, very fast. What you can do is that you can pre-cook. You can cut the things and pre-cook the things. So at the very beginning of the process, you are doing a lot of work. You are doing a front-loaded process. You are cutting, let's say, the vegetables, you are cutting the meats, different types of meats. You are pre-cooking them. And then once the client comes, what you are doing is not just you assemble the things together that are just pre-cooked or pre-cooked before. And in this way, you are executing the process very quickly. What would be in this case, a back-loaded process? It means that you don't do anything at the beginning. So you don't pre-cook, you don't do anything. And once the client comes, you will start doing all of this work, right? It's like when you are preparing for the exam. You may have a front-loaded process. What does it mean, front-loaded process? So perhaps at the beginning of the semester, you are doing a lot. Perhaps you are just consulting also the course of last year. You are doing a lot. And then once you have the exam at the very end, you are just adjusting a bit, making some lecture, some readings, etc. So you are not doing a lot. And then it is easy, it is comfortable, etc. And some of you, I know this, they are using rather a back-loaded process. What does it mean? At the beginning of the semester, during the semester, they are not doing a lot. And then at the very end, they are doing all the readings, they are learning a lot, and it is stressful. You see? So this is also the same thing. Yeah. So it's the process of learning, how you are managing it, how you are adjusting it. And you can do it this way. So some companies have this front-loaded process, and it is better. For example, in general, when you are sending your application, let's say the application process for a job, many companies, they have a front-loaded process. It means they will invite you to an interview only if they get all the documents. Some of the companies, perhaps they may invite you for an interview without, and perhaps they did not ask you all of the documents required. And once you do the interview, then they start asking you about the documents, which is a bit strange. Right? It's better to have all of the documents before, so that the process is triggered, and then it can go fast. So these are two ways of doing it, and you have to think about which type of interaction would be best in the case of the company, right? Good. Any question about communication optimization? Now we have heuristic 9, and it is the last one. It is automation. Yeah, automation. It is about data sharing. It is about network technology, replacing physical flows with information flows, enabling self-service whenever it is possible. Let's say customers that are filling out online forms. So we will have the possibility to deal with automation in much more details in this class. So this is just a foretaste of pre-taste about automation. So we will deal with it in much more detail. We have some, of course, technologies required, like identification, barcodes, and RFID, radio frequency identification technology, but also location, localization, GPS, indoor positioning. By the way, location and indoor positioning, GPS, etc. You will have an entire lecture on this. It will be the lecture done by Professor Brambilla, who is specialized in this area. So the last lecture, it will be in June, actually. The online one, it will be focused on localization technologies. Business rules are also important for automation. We can have an entire lecture, of course, on business rules, but it's not possible. But what is a business rule, and why is it important for automation? This is when we have, let's say, rule-based systems, right? So we have conditions, 1, 2, 3, that should be fulfilled. Once they are fulfilled, then a certain task or a certain process will fire. So this will be generating process or task or whatever. So it's like, for example, do not trigger payment until you receive invoice. So the condition, so the if, right? If the invoice is received, then we can trigger payment. And these are the kind of rules that could be programmed in order to do automation. Of course, the ideal, if we can automate end-to-end processes. And I told you also that there are attempts to automate supply chain management, right? So supply chain management, not the supply chain, the physical execution of production, of certain tasks, but here the management, right? So the work that has been done so far by management people could be automated. So we will get more details when we advance a bit in the lecture. So applying incremental process innovation heuristics. So here we will see some examples. We can use, for instance, elimination. So this is just an example. So this is the process we have been studying through during this lecture, right? You remember. So this is the process of renting an equipment. You have the site engineer that has a request that would like to rent an equipment and sending to the clerk. The clerk is looking at the inappropriate equipment with the supplier, and then once it is found, then we have the works engineer that's approved. Once approved, it can be then rented by sending a purchasing order, a PO, to the supplier. If not, of course, the request will be rejected. So we can think about just eliminating by using the operator or the heuristic elimination that the works engineer does not approve anymore. So what we will have a process like this, which is quite simplified. Yeah, you see here, what I would like here to emphasize is that, yeah, it may be that for some companies is a no-go. For some companies, it may be tolerated. So it depends on the context. Some companies would say yes, some companies would say no. For example, if I may ask you, I may also get different answers. Some people would be agreeing with this, okay, having a very lean process. But some of you say, no, we have to have an instance, I mean here, the works engineer that has to verify whether the equipment that has been triggered by the site engineer and the clerk is really required or not. Okay, so this is the task elimination. So what we can do, of course, is that we can combine it with this heuristic, and then say we can build some controls. Right? So it is true that the site engineer is submitting the equipment rental request, and then once the clerk finds inappropriate equipment, then the purchasing order will be triggered. But we have to put here some statistical control. It means that, say, every fifth request by the site engineer will be controlled by the works engineer, right? So it is 20% sample verification. Yeah, it could be possible. Okay, we can use task composition. So you see here that we have the submit equipment rental request. It comes from the site engineer. Then we have select suitable equipment and check availability. It is done by the clerk. And at the end, of course, the works engineer will review the rental request. The idea is perhaps to compose or to make task composition, to put some tasks together. So we are merging equipment selection, availability check, and rental request together. So instead of the site engineer just submitting a rental request, we will have the site engineer now creating a rental request. So the clerk will not do anything here. So the equipment will be chosen, will be selected by the site engineer. The clerk will be only creating the purchasing order once the works engineer has approved that request. Okay, so this is the application of the heuristic task composition in order to improve the process and make it obviously leaner without these defects, without these loops that may go inside the clerk. Still, we may have the loops there, but very important perhaps what could this process improve is there may be discrepancies between what the site engineer really wants. So perhaps if the site engineer does not capture the requirements well, or perhaps the clerk does not understand the requirements expressed by the site engineer well, there will be a problem, right? But here, it is the site engineer that does everything, and this makes the process leaner, but at the same time, perhaps it reduces the errors inside the process. So we can have also the application of the heuristic 6, which is process specialization and standardization, which is about separate the process for small versus large equipment and streamline the process for small equipment. So we can do a process like this for the small equipment. So the equipment that is not related or not associated with high costs for renting. I don't know, small machine tools or whatever. So here the site engineer will search for the suppliers in the supplier catalog, will create the rental request and create also the purchasing order. Everything is done by the site engineer, right? And then for bigger equipments, for larger equipments, we can have a process that is much it is more complex, right? So this is a process where the works engineer has to provide his or her own approval. Okay, here, is there any question? So I think it is pretty much straightforward. Please, yes. Yes? It repeats.
In the first slide,
Yes?
we applied risk one.
Yes?
There was
Yes?
no more the
Yeah.
it's here and so.
No, it's, yeah, yeah, very good. So the question is, what one we eliminated. So the works engineer, as we use the heuristic elimination, and then for the next heuristic, reappear. So it is not so a sequence. No, no, no. So I'm illustrating just how it could be implemented, how the heuristics it could be implemented. Our reference process is the initial process. Okay. So yeah, of course, if we eliminate the works engineer approval, so it is eliminated. So, yeah. But then we cannot have it again, okay? Okay, here we have a summary of the use of the heuristics. So for heuristic 1, eliminate request for approvals for small equipment, replace approval with empowerment and statistical controls. If we implement 2, compose equipment selection, availability check, and rental request. And heuristic 6, separate process for small versus large equipment, streamline the small process. So once again, you don't implement them all at the same time because yeah, it may not be possible. Okay. So if you implement all the heuristics, you may end up with nothing. So you have to be very careful. But you have to choose, you have to select the heuristic that is most appropriate in your case, or perhaps also a combination of heuristics. Okay? So this is extremely relevant. So it does not mean that whenever you have the possibility of implementing heuristic, you should implement it. Of course, the implementation of the heuristic should be consistent. It should not lead to a contradiction or a problem. It should be consistent, harmonious, homogeneous, right? So with respect to communication optimization, here you see a symbol that from a BPMN that you don't know. I told you that there are many symbols. So here we have an event. Okay? So we have learned that there are start and end events, but here we have an event. Here we call it equipment dispatch. So, and it is about communication optimization. What does this do, this event? Whenever the supplier sends, let's say, the clerk information that the equipment has been dispatched. So then there will be an email automatically going to the site engineer saying that the equipment has been dispatched. Okay? So this is an event. So we have seen that there are, yeah, we sent, the symbol was like this. So we have start event, and then we have the end event. But there are many other events at BPMN, right? And here, an event is equipment is dispatched. So the supplier tells the clerk that the equipment is on the way to the site, and then the clerk, and then there is a system that is automatic that will inform the site engineer, it could be automatic or not, right? That the site engineer will be informed that the equipment is on the way. Okay? So you inform the site engineer when the equipment is dispatched, in order for the site engineer perhaps to prepare for the reception of this equipment. So in this way, we are optimizing the communication. So also here, very important, it is within the scope of communication optimization, is, yeah, we have seen that there may be problems that the site engineer keeps the equipment longer than needed. Why? Because the site engineer perhaps just forgets about the fact that the equipment has to be brought back or has to be sent back. And here, 2 days before the expiry of the rental, there will be an email or there will be information going to the site engineer or a request to the site engineer and asking him or her to decide on rental extension. Okay. So they can request to extend the rental and perhaps not. But 2 days before, it will be like a reminder. Think about the fact that the expiry date is in 2 days and you have to decide whether to keep it longer or not. Okay. So this is another, you see, this is another event with a talk show that, yeah, you can program it for 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, whatever, so that an email or information is sent to the site engineer. Good. So we are done with this. Any question? Any question? So you know all the principles and heuristics for a systematic improvement of supply chain processes. Of course, there are others, but I just focused on the most important ones, okay? And the ones that are really useful in the practice. If no question, we can go now to the next part. And the next part is about tools and techniques for supply chain innovation. So what did we do so far? So far, we have thought about how to improve the processes, right? Using elimination, using parallelism, resequencing of the processes, some communication optimization ideas, and perhaps not all of these potential improvements are applicable. Some improvements, they may be too costly, or they may be too difficult to implement. So here we have, we have a tool here that will enable us in order to see what are the improvements that we should tackle and what are the ones perhaps that we should not do, we should not address. Why? Because, for example, they are difficult to do, and also we have to cross this with the impact. The impact, it could be, once we have placed that improvement, the payoff will be big. Or we may think that, okay, if we do something or we make a certain improvement, still the payoff will be small. And it is very intuitive. Let's say you are combining small payoff, so you are improving the process, but the improvement that you will get is really, really tiny, really marginal. But on the other hand, that improvement is very, very difficult to implement. So, and these kind of improvements, they are in the zone of guilt, because you are spending perhaps a lot of effort just to get a tiny, small improvement, right? So actually, when we are crossing the two axes, difficulty and impact, we get this peak metrics. So possible, implement, challenge, and kill. So big payoff with easy to implement, very clear, implement, right? Small payoff, but still very easy to implement, so it's possible. Big payoff of the improvement, but it is really hard and costly to implement. So this is challenging. And then the ones with a very tiny improvement, but very hard to implement, yeah, it is not worth it to implement them. Okay. So which ones you may start with? What do you think? Which improvements you may start with? Very easy. The implement and perhaps also the possible ones. So these are where we should start. Okay, here I'm putting the improvements, some of the improvements. So don't bother. So it depends on the context, whether specialized is a skill or not. So this should not have any consequence on our understanding. So we see that statistical controls, combine tasks, eliminate approvals for small equipment. These are the tasks for the specific context of a company, are the ones that we should start with. And this is something I would like to emphasize. Don't think that when you discover a way to improve, that improvement has to be implemented. You have to outweigh the improvement with the costs, the spendings, and the efforts required in order to initiate, in order to implement that improvement. Very important. And this is how you do it. How can you fill out this matrix? How would you fill it in practice? How would you do it? Will you go to your office 8 o'clock in the morning? You have 100 improvement potentials, and then just, okay, this isn't the kill, this is very difficult, this is easy. It does not go like that. So you have really to involve all the people that are related to these processes, okay? In order to understand from them how difficult it is, how easy it is, what the impact would be. So we have definitely to do perhaps a workshop with other employees, with your colleagues, in order to understand that. Of course, you have to bring the right people from the supply chain that will help you filling this out and then make the decision based on this. Yeah, another thing. It's also an important tool. We have been talking about processes. We have seen also that there may be problems in the processes. We have analyzed the process maps, etc. But in order to know that there are problems inside the supply chain process, inside the organization in general, what you should do, you should keep an issue register. What is an issue register? Is like a list. It could be an Excel list, or it could be whatever document you may think of, a shared document or not shared, whatever. But a document that will save all the issues, all the problems that you may encounter within the scope of a certain process. So the purpose is to maintain, organize, and prioritize perceived weaknesses of the process. So these are the issues, the problems. The sources of the issues, it is the input to a supply chain innovation project. So whenever we have a problem, there is a possibility to improve. Yeah, I have been teaching innovation management for a long time. And then sometimes my students say, how we may come up with ideas for innovation, right? Innovation products, not necessarily for supply chain in general. I tell them a very simple trick, actually. You may go to a store, a grocery store or an electronics store, and you look at the shelves. You look at the products. And whenever you remember that there is something not going well, everything that does not go well, even in your interaction with companies, with organizations, with public services, whenever you have a problem, an issue, there is an opportunity for innovation. Okay? Whenever you encounter a problem, it's an opportunity for innovation. Yeah, I tell also this story to my students always. Okay, I will do it now also. I remember, it was some time ago, it was in Germany. I was renting in a flat, a small apartment. And then I should receive from the owner a new fridge. Okay, the owner told me that the fridge will come, and then the technicians that will install the fridge called me, and they told me, look, who will deliver the fridge? And on, let's say, on Thursday or on Friday, you have to be, on Thursday or within the week, you have to be at home between 2 and 6 p.m. Literally, I told them, please give me an appointment. They told me, yeah, but we will be passing by between 2 and 6. This is the appointment. I told them this is not an appointment. We negotiated a bit, and then, because I'm working, and we could organize between 5 and 6. It was perfect, because it would be after work, I would be there, I would get my fridge, and everything would work. So I thought, at that time, there's a lot of opportunity for improvement here, for innovation, because I know, for example, you would like to get your internet connection, right? They will tell you, yeah, please stay the whole day at home, because it can be that we pass by some time during the day. It is absolutely fine. I cannot understand that. The trick works, really, and they are obliged to do better, because you're obliging them to do better. So whenever we have a problem, we have a potential for innovation. The same thing here. Okay, let's look at an example of what the information required in an insurance register. So issue identifier, could be a number, whatever, a short name, description of the issue, assumptions, the impact, qualitative and quantitative, and possible improvement actions. Large supply chain process innovation projects may require issue trackers. Look, this is an example, right? I told you I use the example of equipment rental process truth. So the issue name is equipment kept longer than needed. So the site engineer keeps the equipment for more time than it is actually required, which is, of course, bad for the company. The company has to pay more than it should for equipment that is not used. The description. So this is the issue name, the description. Site engineers keep rented equipment longer than needed by asking for deadline extensions to the supplier. Here we have some assumptions. 3,000 pieces of equipment rented per year. In 10% of the cases, the equipment is kept 2 days more than needed, and the average rental cost is 100 per day. So here you can have an estimation of quantitative impact. 10% of the cases out of the 3,000 pieces of equipment that are rented per year, multiplied with 2 days, multiplied with 100 euro per day, this will result in 60,000 euro per year just costs for keeping the equipment longer than needed. So this is the kind of calculation that you can do with some assumptions, okay, with some assumptions. At best, if you have some data that can support this, and then at the end you will have the table looking like this. So the equipment is kept longer than needed. Okay, so quantitative impact is 60,000. Wrong equipment delivered, this is also another issue. What does it mean? So the explanation or the description is site engineers reject delivered equipment due to non-conformance to their specification. Then the assumptions, 3,000 pieces of equipment rendered per year. 10% of them are rejected when they are delivered due to an internal mistake, for example, by the clerk or misunderstanding between the clerk and the site engineer. And for each equipment rejected due to an internal mistake, Build It, the company, is billed 100 euro. The qualitative impact, disrupted schedules, employees, stress and frustration, and this will lead to 30,000 euro losses per year. 3,000 pieces of equipment multiplied with 10%, which are rejected, multiplied with 100 euro per rejection, meaning that we have a 30,000 euro quantitative impact. Late payment fees. So these are also another problem. If, for example, the company is paying the fees later, invoices are not paid by their due date. So again, we have 3,000 pieces of equipment rented per year. Average rental time is 4 days. Rental cost is 100 euro per day. Each rental leads to one invoice. And about 10% of the invoices are paid late. Penalty for late payment is 4%. So of course, what you can do is that you are multiplying everything together, and then you will have late payment fees per year equal to 4,800 euros. So I think this is simple too, but still very powerful because you have a track of all of the issues that you encounter in the process of the supply chain. Yeah, companies that are not tracking their problems may not be able to improve. So monitoring and tracking your processes is the first thing that you have to do when you would like to improve. We have also the Pareto chart. Yeah, every one of you know it. So this is the 20/80 rule. So, by the way, Pareto is an Italian economist, right? You know it. You know what is the work that he has done in order to discover this rule, the anti-20 rule, which is very powerful. Anti-20 is very powerful because in order to get 80% of the grade, when you are studying, you should just put in 20% of the effort. It works, right? But not in supply chain innovation. So it's the rule. We should have an exception of the rule here. But how he found out Pareto this 20/80? You know how? So he made the analysis in a bank, for a bank, and he found that 20% of the people who have had savings, they are owning actually 80% of all the money inside the bank. And then, of course, so it was very, very important insight. So 20% of the individuals, they were leading to 80% of the money. So it's quite powerful. And then we know also that 20% of our products will lead to 80% of our sales, etc., etc. 20% of lead to 80% of the grade. Okay, so it's useful to prioritize a collection of issues. The bar chart, where the height of the bar denotes the impact of each issue. Bars sorted by impact and superposed curve for cumulative percentage impact. So it seems a bit abstract here, but it is nothing else than drawing the Pareto chart. Look here, we start with the issue that has the biggest impact, 60,000 euro for the equipment kept longer. Then the wrong equipment delivered, the impact is 30,000, and then late payment fees is 4,800. Okay, for three issues it's very, very simple. It's very, very straightforward. But think if you had here 200 issues or 300 issues, 300 different types of issues. So things will get difficult to analyze if you don't draw yourself the Pareto chart. And then you can know what are the 20% of the issues that would lead to 80% of the impact, and then you can focus on the issues that will lead to the highest impact. Okay, so this is the idea. Then we have the root cause analysis. So in an abstract way, so we have some factors that lead to some issues. So we have the issue here, right? So the issue that we have identified, some equipment is kept longer, late payment, whatever. So we would like to understand what are the factors, what are the causes of this issue. So this is the idea. And we have here two types of tools which are really very important. What you can do, of course, in a company that, okay, we have the issue, and then you apply one of these tools. So one is called the YY diagram, or you can use the cause and effect diagram in order to brainstorm, to understand what are the causes of the issue that we experience inside the company or inside our supply chain. So there is the YY diagram. It is called also the 5 Ys. It is creativity technique. I don't know, perhaps some of you have already done a creativity lecture or creativity training, whatever. So the YY diagram or the YY technique here, it is something that kids with 5, 6 years old, they do it perfectly. So my daughter is 6 years old, and it is challenging me. She's challenged me all the time. So she asks about everything why. And once you say, you give an answer, she's asking you why. Until you really, you're saying, I don't know. You're challenged, right? And this is the same technique, it is creativity technique, that you start here with the problem and you ask why. Why that problem has been taking place. Once you know why, you ask the second why, and in general, you go for 5 whys, because more than that, perhaps you are at the, I would say, at the ground, at the origin of the problem, okay? And yeah, from the issue to the first contributing factor to the second contributing factor that will lead to the first one, etc., etc. Okay, so here, let's go through this example. The site engineer keeps equipment longer than needed. Okay, so this is the issue. Why? The site engineer keeps the equipment longer than needed because the site engineer fears equipment will not be available later when needed. Okay, very fair. And why the site engineer fears equipment will not be available? Because the time between request and delivery is too long. And why is the time between request and delivery is too long? Because excessive time is spent in finding suitable equipment and improving the request. Okay, so because the clerk is spending a lot of time, or the works engineer is so busy that he's not able to approve in time the request. And why? Because the time spent waiting for works engineer to check request, or worse, the clerk is contacting a lot of suppliers. So you see, here we try to find really the origin of the problem, and then we can tackle these problems. Of course, we can go lower and ask him why, but I don't know whether the exercise would be then productive enough, but at least here we identified important causes for the problem. And for instance here, if the time spent for works engineer to check requests is too long, then according to our heuristics, it is better perhaps than to put the approval, especially for the small equipment or for everything with the site engineer, and then just to build here some statistical control. So it will be a good proof why, for why statistical control would be good here. Okay, and then the fishbone diagram, or it is called also the Ishikawa diagram. Perhaps you have seen it on lean management, right? Ishikawa diagram or fishbone. Who has never seen it? I think never. Okay, no problem. So we are here to learn. So it's So it is a fishbone because it looks like a fish, right? So you have here the head of the fish, and then you have here the fish bones, right? And always you are categorizing or clustering the possible factors in 6 categories: measurement, material, machine, method, man, and milieu. So the issue here, we have an example. So you have primary and secondary causes. Let's do it with this example. So equipment rejected at delivery. Okay? Now, the method could be problematic. So this is the primary cause. The site engineer does not validate the choice of the equipment. And it is true. You remember in all the processes, the site engineer provides his or her own requirements to the clerk. Then the clerk makes the choice, the selection of the equipment, and sends the PO to the supplier. So there is no verification whether the selected equipment is appropriate for the site engineer or not. And yeah, this is, so the method process here, site engineer does not validate the choice of equipment. And the secondary problem is that the clerk is entirely responsible for equipment selection. So perhaps to improve, we may complicate the process a bit, and then we integrate some checks before then the PO is placed with the supplier. I will do it with the machine. You can do the other as an exercise to understand it. So the machine. The system does not keep the site engineer informed. So the system does not tell the site engineer what equipment has been selected. Okay? For instance, if the site engineer is informed at the right time about the equipment, if the equipment is not the right one, is not appropriate, the site engineer will say, no, you should not deliver. And in this way, we are avoiding the problem altogether, right? But here, the site engineer is not informed, the equipment is delivered, and only at delivery, the site engineer will understand that this is not the equipment that is required. You see? So here we are categorizing the types of the problems, and we are trying to find for each category of problems, what are the primary causes and the secondary causes. And this is a very known technique. It is called the Ishikawa diagram, or the fishbone diagram. And it is, Ishikawa is the name of the inventor. Or you can call it just the fishbone technique, okay? How do you do it? How do you implement it? Of course, in a workshop, in a brainstorming session with your colleagues. Do not use it alone, never, okay? You can use it, so the technique will not, of course, tell you what are the problems, but the technique will facilitate the identification of the problems, and most importantly, it will tell you what are the biggest 6 categories where we have to find the factors that will lead to the problem, which are milieu, man, method, measurement, material, and machine. Great. So if there are no questions, no. I will do now the last technique before the break, and it is called failure mode and effect analysis, or FMEA. So I will read. Do you use it? So it is a method that is used a lot in engineering, and can be used, of course, also for the detection of improvements in supply chain processes. We'll see an example just afterwards. FMEA, have you ever used it, learned about it? No. So it is called failure modes and effects analysis. It is a technique for estimating risks and ranking those risks by considering their likelihood of occurrence and potential effects. When applying the method to supply chain processes, each process step is evaluated to determine the failure modes. Where can the process fail? Right? What are the risks inside the process? Now, then each failure mode is rated with a score from 1 to 10 for its occurrence, severity of its impact, and the likelihood of tracking down the cause of the failure can also be estimated. I call it undetectability of the failure. We will see in a minute, the example is very, very clear. After risk prioritization, the team develops action plans aimed at reducing those risks to an acceptable level. So here we are trying to understand which projects of improvement we can initiate in order to reduce the failures inside our process. Good. Failure mode and effect analysis. So, first of all, we start with the failure modes. We have to identify them. And here, we will use as an example a checkout. What are the kind of problems? So obviously, a checkout is an important process inside the supply chain of a retailer when you go through the checkout, right? Now, the failure can happen, let's say, there is no barcode on the product. The barcode reader does not function. The wrong capture of product and price data in the computer system. By the way, do you check whether the products that you bought, that their prices are matching the prices that you have then on the checkout receipt? Right? Did you check that? Whether the prices that you see on the shelf are matching with the prices in the system? Huh? Only when there are discounts. And I tell you, please check. There is no guarantee that they are matching. You can tell me, yeah, but we have to learn by heart all the prices. And yes, otherwise you will pay more. And believe me, if you see a checkout that is not advancing, it is because I am discussing with the checkout that the price that has been counted, it is not matching with the shelves prices, really, and it happens a lot. So please check that. So you will not get rich, huh? But it is a kind of principle, right? So if it costs €2 or $1.99, it is not $2.99, it is $1.99, full stop. If you would like to get $2.99, just place on the shelf, $2.99, I will pay you $2.99 because when I'm getting the product from the shelf into to the basket, then of course I have decided to buy it for that price, full stop. Okay? So check that. It happens a lot. So no barcode of the product. So it may be in some cases that the product does not contain a barcode for whatever reason. So the likelihood of occurrence, it is not very high. So if it would have been high, we will give it 10. But here it is 5. Okay? What is the severity of the effect? The severity of the effect is not too big because what the cashier or the operator of the checkout will do will try to verify with his or her colleagues what the real price is. And what is the undetectability? So we are talking here about the undetectability. So we would like to have high detectability, right? When we have undetectability score, so it's not too high, so it is almost very detectable, right? The problem, because all what you do is that you can see the product, and if it does not contain a barcode, then it does not contain. You can identify it very quickly. And then what you do is that you multiply 5 with 2 with 4, and then you have a number of 40. Then barcode reader does not function. So the likelihood of occurrence is very low. The severity of the effect is not very big, and the undetectability is very low. So it is highly detectable. So at the moment where you are scanning the barcode, you will know whether it functions or not. So it is, 1 multiplied with 1, it is estimation priority is 2. But look at this, wrong capture of product and price data in the computer system. The likelihood of occurrence in the case of this company is 3. It's not too high. The severity of the effect is very, very high. Why? Because you are letting customers perhaps pay more than they should. And if the other way around, that the customers pay less, it is good for the customers, but it is not good for the company. So In both cases, it's not good at all. So the severity of the effect is high. And the undetectability is somehow high. So how could you know that the price on the shelves is not matching with the price in the system? You see? So then when we are here multiplying 3 and with 8 with 6, we are finding 144. And okay, well, I can go through the list, but I will not do. But the idea here is that to look at the estimation priority, and for the high numbers, so of course you can get at most 10 multiplied with 10 multiplied with 10, which will give us 1,000. So these are the biggest problems. But here, obviously, for our case, 144 is the highest number. And this means that we have to dedicate the problem of wrong capture of product and price data in the computer system high attention, a high priority, and start very, very urgently a special project to cope with that problem. So this is FMEA, failure mode and effects analysis. So this identifying the failures and then the effect analysis. Good. Yeah, at the end, you have to do your projects on your own. So you don't have a tool doing the project. But what you can here, you can, of course, estimate the priorities and start with the most urgent ones. And this tool makes them very obvious, right? Any question on this? Seems that we don't have questions. I think you need perhaps a refreshment, either a coffee or a break. Let's have some refreshments. We continue at 9:50, okay? At 9:50. Okay. Could you take your seats, please? So we now, by the way, I will give you the theoretical foundation of our workshop. Okay? So this is definitely needed in order to understand why the workshop is the way it is. And we will talk about the how of supply chain innovation. So how could we generate supply chain innovations, perhaps from a strategic point of view? And then we will use the business model as a driver for supply chain innovation. You will see how this works. So this is the theory behind the workshop, is the application. This is our outline, and we are here now. So you can see where we are. So first of all, I would like to start with some preliminary observations. So far we did supply chain innovation from a process perspective. And now in this part, we will deal with supply chain innovation from a strategic perspective. We will focus on the business model view. Yeah, you remember our framework for supply chain innovation? So our framework, so I repeat it again because this is something you have to know. Our framework is that we have three dimensions of supply chain innovation. We have business processes related to the supply chain. We have the supply chain configuration or structure. This is the second. And we have the technologies as the third dimension of supply chain innovation. So process, configuration, or structure, and technology. And all around there is the business model that has an influence on the supply chain. Now, I don't know if you remember, I told you that there are mutual interdependencies between business models and supply chains. And I told you this during the first session of our course. So, let's say there is business model innovation and supply chain innovation. So in the workshop, what we will do and what we will do during the lecture today is this, we will deal with this implication, how business model innovation can lead to supply chain innovation. So this is lecture and workshop. But also, there is another direction which goes from the supply chain innovation, which can influence the business model, can lead to business model innovation. And this is the article that I gave you, but we will discuss next time. Okay? So we will not discuss it today. So today we will deal with this. Okay, so actually in the slide, this is the explanation of what it is on that slide. Now, I would like to start with a short question. What is a business model? I know that some of you has already heard about it, perhaps used it, implemented it, perhaps in a startup. What is a business model? Very good. So the way a company creates and captures value. So in general, when we talk about the business model, and so it's good that you are talking about creating value, which is a part of the business model. But in general, when we talk about business models, people say it is the way companies are making money, right? But of course, it's too restrictive. Does not cover the whole meaning of what the business model is. Yeah, some of the people say it is the way companies are making money. Some of them say it is the logic of operating the business. So according to which logic the business is operated. So there are many, many definitions. And in order to work with this construct, with this term, we need, of course, a very precise definition. We need to conceptualize what the business model is, or better, to operationalize it. To operationalize a business model means to identify what are the main features or the main dimensions inside the business model, right? So obviously creating and capturing value is an important part of it. So, yeah, we should bear something in mind that one important driver of new business models is the customer value. So in general, we would like to provide a certain customer value. So something that our customers will pay for. So we need to provide this value. And once we know what this customer value is, we can then translate this into business model. So first of all, we have to capture what our customers are wanting to pay for. This is our starting point, always. Now, what are the dimensions of customer value? Customer value could be very complex, but I looked at a supply chain management book, which is the book by Semchi Levy et al. Yeah, a very good book, by the way, one of the best books in supply chain management. And then they are defining customer value in this way. They say that customer value could be conformance to requirements. Conformance to requirements. What does it mean, conformance to requirements? It just means that the company is producing components and parts that are matching with the requirements, with the specifications of the client. Let's say you would like to buy a bearing which is a mechanical component that is used in many, many mechanical devices. And it has an inner diameter, and it has an outer diameter, these bearings. So you have here kind of ball bearings. So let's say the client would like to have an outer diameter equal to, let's say, 13 centimeter plus minus 0.1 millimeter. So this is the specification by the customer, and this is the requirement. So if you are providing a bearing with 13.005 millimeter, or 13 centimeter exactly, or 13.1, there will be conformance with the requirements. But if you provide a bearing that is 13.2, so it will be out of performance, it will be out of specification, right? So you will not provide customer value in this way. No customer value. So this is one way in order to provide value to the customer. Another thing that provides value to the customer is product selection. What is meant with product selection? It is meant product variety. The variants, the models that you are providing, product models I mean here, that you are providing to your customer. In general, we think that the more variety, the better, right? You would like to go to the shelves, let's say when you go to the grocery store, and you would like to see a lot of variety, right? Yeah, what about when you go to a grocery store and you find only one type of butter, one type of milk, one type of biscuits, one type of chocolate? It's boring, right? You would like to see variety. You'd like to see a lot of variety, because we think that when we have a lot of variety, we have more choice, and by definition, choice is good, because choice is also freedom. It can get very philosophical. There is a very nice book on this, right? And really about choice and freedom. So it's right? So it's good to have variety. Yeah, I can tell you that there are many, many studies showing that when we get a lot of variety, this will have a negative effect. So people get overwhelmed with variety. You know, you don't know what to pick out of all the variants that you find, not to know to what to select. And in general, what we find, and this is also in many studies, so if you have, this is product variety, and this is the value for the customer value. In general, it is found that there is an inverted U-shaped curve. So it means that, so the value, with more variety, the value increases. And then at some point in time, it will go down. And here, it is more or less the optimal variety from the customer perspective, right? And believe me, it's not easy at all to find this optimal variety from a customer perspective, where you have this huge inverted U-shaped curve then going down, meaning that you achieved here the optimum. So, but theoretically, and it has been shown in some studies that it go like this. So you cannot indefinitely increase variety, and then people, are welcoming this variety. At a certain point in time, people get overwhelmed. They get confused with variance. Okay, so this adds value, of course. Then price and brand. This is an important part of customer value. Yeah, we buy certain brands because they add value. This is my preferred example is Apple computer. Yeah, I don't have an Apple computer, but it works well also. But the brand is important. Okay, yeah. And I know my wife has also Apple. It tells me it gives you an incredible experience. But incredible experience. I have also an incredible experience with mine. Anyway, but it is this way. It's this way. Okay, brand, price, and brand. And sometimes it's the higher the price, the better. The higher the price, the better. Yeah, there are many from marketing. There are many studies. Yeah, that where they study price and brand, and it shows that it provides customer value. Value-added services, right? What does it mean, value-added services? It means all the services that you might get on top of a product, right? So let's say, especially in machinery, when, let's say, businesses are buying equipment from other companies, so really industrial equipment. So you don't buy just industrial equipment and then you operate it yourself. You need a lot of services, maintenance services, you need perhaps repair services, spare part services, a call center or hotline perhaps that helps you, especially in business to customer. Let's when you buy a car, you are looking for certain services. These are the services on top that you provide, with a product, right? Yeah. What about the services by Apple? Did the computer break down and no? You don't know? It's yours or not? Yeah, but did it break or not? No. Perfect. So very good. Yeah. I remember many years ago. I had but by the way, I know that Apple services, they are not very nice. But many years ago, I remember I had a Dell computer. It was at work, and then my computer broke down. It doesn't work anymore. Yeah, of course, when the computer breaks, especially when at work, you are really very angry. Yeah, you don't know why you are angry, but you are just angry. And there is nobody you should be angry about, but you are angry about the situation somehow. The only good thing is, next day at 8 o'clock, the technician from Dell, it was in my office. And he repaired at that time my computer. I was really surprised. What a service. Next day, there was somebody repairing my computer. In a couple of hours, my computer is functional. So this is value-added services. Of course, we pay for that. I mean, but it's nice. Relationships and experience. Yeah, relationships and experience. Yeah, you go, for example, to a coffee shop, not because of the coffee, of course, also because of the coffee, but also because of the experience. Right? If the coffee shop gives you the possibility of getting internet access, gives you the possibility of a calm atmosphere in order to read some documents to prepare for your study. So this could be an experience, right, that you get in addition to the coffee. Right? So these are all customer value dimensions. Yeah, I also always ask my students about what about sustainability? Should be a customer value or should be inserted as a customer value or not? Yeah, and there is a big debate. So would customers value really sustainability or not? In the original list of the authors, sustainability is not there. But we may think of it, right? integrating sustainability as really important customer value. As thing is, when you integrate it, it means that it is a dimension you would like to pay for. Would you like to pay for sustainability? I don't want to get into the discussion because it's really difficult. Anyway. So, first of all, we are agreeing about customer values trigger business models, right? Very important. Now we will talk about the canvas-based view of business models. Yeah, I asked you during the first lecture who has already worked with a business model canvas by Osterwalder and yeah. Who did it? Who worked with it? You worked with it? Yeah? I swear I will not ask you any question about it, so please raise your hand. Who has never worked with it? Never? Okay. But you know it? Do you know it? Yeah. But you never worked with it. Okay. So this is it. Yeah, this is the business model canvas. And actually, when I come to this lecture, I assume that my students, most of my students know it. And those that do not know it, no problem at all, because I call it as it's like a table, it's a drawing. Yeah, you have 9 dimensions. You know how it is used in a workshop in real life, and practitioners, by the way, they like it. I have seen many managers, they love it. They can do, no problem. And it is composed of 9 dimensions. So here you have the value proposition. These are the products and services that companies are producing. Then we have the key resources and activities and the key partners. So here you have everything. So on the left-hand side, from the value proposition, everything that you use to create that value proposition, right? Yeah, it's like the upstream part in a supply chain somehow. Right? And then here you have the customer relationships and channels by which you are delivering the value proposition to your customers. So these are the customer segments. And here you have the channels, online channels, offline channels, and then your customer relationships. What kind of relationships you are maintaining with your customers. And the thing is, once you have done this part, you will incur costs. So if you use resources to make a product, you have to incur costs. If you pay your suppliers to build certain components, you have to incur costs. You have to pay some money. But here, once you do this, you get money. So you will have revenue streams. So this is the idea of the canvas. And then in most of the workshops, I worked, I was involved, and I don't know what is your experience. It was like we are putting this canvas on an A0 paper, a big paper, and then taking post-its and then putting the post-its in the different dimensions and the different boxes of this canvas, right? Do you have to share this experience? Do you have to share this the same way? So really the idea of business model development is nothing else than filling out this business model canvas with some features. Yeah, what we think about what our value proposition will be, what is the kind of a product we would like to provide to our customers, with which suppliers, which channels we will use to deliver the products, who are our customers, yeah, what are the cost structures that we have, from whom we get the money. So these are the kind of ideas we discuss in a business model workshop. I have never been satisfied with the business model canvas, believe me, for many reasons. But the most important reason is, I will tell you about a study that has been done with executives. It has been done in Switzerland by a professor called Martin Epler, who is discussing, or he is researching visuals in management. And he did a study with executives. So he had a group of executives that had to develop a business model by using the canvas, the business model canvas. And he had another group of people, of executives, that had to develop a new business model based on an empty PowerPoint. Nothing. Just a white PowerPoint. And then he measured the level of innovation. And here, the level of innovation, of course, it has been measured according to a simple metric, which is the number of ideas created. Because the utility, how useful are these ideas is very difficult to measure. But he just measured how many ideas have been created in both groups, those who use the canvas and those who use just the empty PowerPoint. And guess what? Which group was more creative? Exactly. So yeah, it's very, very nice when you have some studies that come up with counterintuitive results. The thing is, look, a white PowerPoint is more powerful with respect to the creation of ideas than the business model canvas. So why do we use the business model canvas then? I'm shocking you with this result, right? Shocking, perhaps it's yeah, I'm surprising it. And this is because, yeah, and I wrote a paper with a colleague, I think in 2017, it was 2017, yes, and then we have explained why it occurs. Why it occurs. Look, an empty PowerPoint in general, it is nice for creativity. It's nice because you don't have boundaries when you are generating ideas. You can generate ideas the way you want. The business model canvas, it creates boundaries. It is restrictive in front of the generation of ideas. But of course, it has an important also utility. It has an important role in the sense that once you would like, let's say, to structure an existing business model of a company, you would like to understand how the business model of a given company works. If you have a PowerPoint, you will not be able to start anywhere. You don't have any starting point. But when you are using the business model canvas, you know how to more or less how to describe the business model. You say, okay, yeah, the company is doing this. So you see, so the canvas perhaps has a different role than what many people think it is. We use it for brainstorming, but obviously it is not the ideal tool for brainstorming. Just an empty PowerPoint would be much better. But for structuring idea, once you have the ideas, once you have identified the business model, it would be perhaps good to put it in a canvas. You see, there is a big difference between using it as a tool for creativity or using it as a tool for structuring. Is it clear? There's a big difference here. Okay, it was also, yeah, in 2013, I published an article also on business models. I was unsatisfied, and my unsatisfied, or I was unsatisfied with many things. You know, the canvas has 9 dimensions, and in general, when I'm doing my lectures, if I would like to remember all the 9 dimensions, I always get 7 and 2, they go out of my mind. And then I said to myself, how we may perhaps have a canvas that is easier to remember. And here it is, first of all, it starts with the definition of a business model, how I define it. It is the way a company creates, delivers, communicates, and captures value out of a value proposition. So you see here, there are structuring layers. So we have the value proposition here. The value proposition is the same as the canvas, but here I call that the structuring layer. So the value proposition that you have, the product and service that you have first of all to communicate it to your customers. Your customers must understand what kind of products and services you are selling. If they do not understand, it's not possible. Yeah, for a computer, it is easy to say, yeah, what the computer is good for, but yeah, think in business to business. If you would like to sell a training, go to the market and try to sell a training. Yeah, selling a training, it would be much more difficult than selling a computer, because the people, when you go to the top manager of a company and say, I would like to sell you training, the top manager will say, yeah, what is the training good for? If you say, yeah, it will improve the knowledge of your people inside the organization, how can I translate that in cash? So it is not a sufficient argument to say, I will just train your people, right? So this is, so communication of value is extremely relevant. Then you create that value. So for the communication of value, you need the channels for communicating value. How do they communicate that? And the story for communicating value. Yeah, for example, Walmart, everyday low prices. Excellent. Yeah, Audi, the German car manufacturer, they say advantage through technology or something like that. So these are more or less messages in order to say to the customers what are the kind of value that they are proposing to the customers. Then you have value creation, you have the partnerships and the key resources and processes. We have the value delivery. To deliver the value, we need the distribution channels and the customers. And then once we did all of that, we can capture the value. And here we have the revenue streams and the cost structure. So value capture, value delivery, value creation, value communication, they are structuring layers. You don't put anything inside, you put on the outside layer everything you want, and of course, inside the value proposition. So this provides a bit more of structure to the business model. Then you have also the value proposition canvas. Look, you have here the value proposition, yeah, and you have here the customers. So the value proposition, in order to understand what the value proposition should be, what are the features of the value proposition, always we need to understand what the customers are looking for, our customers. And here in the value proposition canvas, which is also developed by Osterwalder, here is the customer. Yeah, very important. Here's the customer. And here is the value proposition. So we have to look at the customer jobs. What are the customer jobs? So these are the jobs that the customers want to get fulfilled by means of the product or the service. If you buy, let's say a very simple example, you buy a car. Why are you buying a car? What is the customer job that you would like to fulfill when you buy a car? Move around, mobility, right? So perhaps the most important customer job is mobility. But of course, mobility is perhaps there are other things you may have to get fulfilled with it. When you buy a washing machine, what you would like to get? Washing clothes. So not washing clothes. There's a big difference. When I buy a washing machine, I would like to get clean clothes. Washing is not interesting to me. What is important is clean clothes, right? And this is really very important. Very important. When you think about the customer's jobs, look, you are here. You think this is a washing machine. And I would like to get higher in abstraction. So it's like a move higher in abstraction. I need clean clothes. And once I know I need clean clothes, I may go down again. Perhaps I can fulfill clean clothes with other products or services. Yeah, this thinking is really important. Think about a coffee. Yeah, you will hear coffee many times today. It's an example I will use many times. Why are you drinking a coffee? We ask the question, why? So why a washing machine? Why a car? Why are you drinking a coffee? Have you ever thought, why are you drinking a coffee? To get energy, to wake up, right? Okay, this is coffee. I drink coffee to wake up, to get energy. So is it the only way to get energy? And then you start thinking about different ways of fulfilling that customer's job. This is interesting because you are getting higher in the abstraction, and once you get higher, you have all of a sudden different ways, or you open different ways to fulfill that. Okay? So this is the customer's job. These are the customer pains and gains. Customer's pains. So let's take an example, very simple example, car. The customer's job is mobility. I would like to go from A to B. If the car does not deliver that job, it's better to not get that car, right? And then what are the kind of pains and gains that a customer may encounter when having a car? Let's say one of the one of the pains that the customer may encounter is that sitting in the bottlenecks and the traffic jam, right? Who would like to sit in the traffic jam in the car? Yeah, spending 2 hours in traffic jam. Oh, wow, it's a nice traffic jam. Today it was a marvelous traffic jam. 2 hours, I was just, no, but 3 hours, no. You like perhaps to go around that traffic jam. And then what are the gains? Yeah, for example, it is nice to say, today it was possible, let's say, to work when I was mobile, right? Games working, or perhaps getting entertained, right? Having an entertainment system in the car. Yeah, getting entertained. So the gains is being entertained or getting some time for work, and pains is getting in the traffic jam. So this is the customer, right? This is the customer. We are looking here at the position of the customer. Now we have to look at the value proposition. And by the way, for the customer's job, here, for every customer job, and this is important, for every customer job, one by one, for each one, we must have one feature here in the products and services that enable us to achieve that customer job. For example, mobility, buying a car. Buying a car. One pain is sitting at the traffic jam. Traffic jam here, perhaps how to relieve that pain. So this would be a feature of our value proposition, how to relieve that pain. They are called the pain relievers. Perhaps having a powerful having a powerful navigation system in the car that drives you around the traffic jams. Okay? So for that pain, I have a feature here in my value proposition that enables me to relieve that pain. And gains, I would like to get entertained when I'm driving. So when I am mobile in general, and then the gain creator would be an entertainment system in the car. You see? So we will have selling a car endowed with a navigation system or sophisticated navigation system and entertainment system to relieve the pains and create the gain. Is it clear how it works? And good. So this is the canvases which are important, and I call them the canvas-based view of business model. So it is a canvas perspective on business. Now there is a very interesting thing which is called the business model patterns. Yeah, what are business model patterns? What is a pattern? Yeah, when you see a pattern, you see a structure. You see something perhaps that repeats itself. And it happens that business models have many patterns. And if I ask you, what are the kind of business models you know in the automotive industry? You know many business models in the automotive industry. All these models enable the automotive industry the way we know it. Leasing, very good. Leasing. So you sell, or you selling a car, yeah. Was selling, leasing. So these are business models. Yeah. You know many of them. Car sharing. Car renting. So these are all models that we know regarding the car. There are many models around the globe. Yeah, the fuel station, when you go to the fuel station now, is very important for the automotive industry. So this is the fuel station business model. You go to get gas. Yes? What are the other business models important in the automotive industry? Yeah, services. So here we are talking about suppliers, but services, yeah, repair services, very important. Yes. Insurance. Can you drive without insurance? No. Insurance services. Other. Yeah, banks. Yeah. Huh? Road infrastructure. Yeah, because there are a lot of, all of these highways you have to pay for, right? So road infrastructure, absolutely. Road infrastructure business. You have all of these banks giving you credits and loans in order to buy a car, and then you can bring back the money. So you see, and if we brainstorm, we may have really a lot more of business models in the automotive industry. And these are all patterns we observe in the business in the automotive industry. The idea is, and this is relevant also for the workshop. The idea is, in business model research, by the way, in general, what we want to do is that to identify patterns of business models in certain industries. Why we identify them? Because we would like to transfer them perhaps afterwards to other industries. So we have in the automotive industry all of these business model patterns. So these are the patterns in the business model, of the business model of the automotive industry. But what about the communication industry, or the food industry, let's say, or I don't know, food industry. So the food industry has perhaps business models that are completely different from these. Leasing in the food industry, sharing in the food industry, I don't know. But the idea here, once we have the patterns, we may think about perhaps transferring them here. Transfer. And then once we transfer them, we try to make sense of the new business models in the new industry, or in the industry where we would like to do the transfer for. And all of a sudden, we get business model innovations here. Because, what does it mean to have a repair service and a food business? Perhaps it does not make any sense. Perhaps we can look at this business model differently in a way we can transfer it. So a business model innovation does not mean that we are innovating the business model completely in a way that we are creating a completely new business model. No. It is sufficient to transfer some business models from an area where they have been used to be implemented a lot to an area where they have not been implemented at all. And still, it is called a business model innovation. Right? And this is an important exercise. How to transfer business model patterns from one sector to another. So you get more or less inspiration in your business model development from the patterns that have been used elsewhere in other industries. Okay? This is relevant. Now, we have business model patterns, and here I have just a small selection. So one business model is called direct selling. So it is called like this. It is also known as disintermediation. Dell, for example, and therefore Dell's business supply chain. Dell, in the past many years ago, they did disintermediation. They got distributors and retailers out of the supply chain. This corresponds to a business model called direct selling, right? So there is an equivalent here, which is direct selling. There is another business model pattern that is used many times. It is called multi-sided platforms. What is a multi-sided platform? A multi-sided platform is a business model that connects two sides of the market. Airbnb connects two sides of the market. Who are the sides of the market connected by Airbnb? House seekers for an accommodation, right? So these are the two sides. Let's say Google. Google is connecting also, or Apple. They are also multi-sided platforms. Google, you have the users, and you have also the companies that would like to have perhaps their names very high in when you are searching the web. So a multi-sided platform is always, so this is the MSP, and it is connecting at least two sides. So one side here, they could be, for example, buyers, and one side it could be sellers. But since it is not two-sided platform, it is multi-sided. It could be two-sided, of course, so it could be multi-sided in the sense that we may have other sites in the platform. Perhaps it could be, I don't know, other service providers or whatever. So you have 3 or 4 sites of the platform. One of the biggest issues in multi-sided platforms, it is called the chicken egg problem, chicken egg dilemma. Why do we have the chicken egg problem in a multi-sided platform, especially at the start of the platform? Look, in order to have enough buyers on one side, you should have, of course, enough sellers. But in order for sellers to come on the platform, you should have enough buyers. So with which side of the market? So why should sellers come if there are no buyers? And why should buyers come if there are no sellers? So at the launch of an MSP, there is a big issue, which is the chicken egg problem. And what companies are doing in practice, for example, Airbnb, you may think, or Uber, how they could start at the beginning, because they were confronted with the chicken egg problem. They started because they could raise capital, perhaps venture capital, in order to subsidize one side of the market. So they got money in order, for example, to have a lot of people here, to push the breeding up of one side. And once that side forms and gets shape, then you will have step by step, hopefully, right? We have new buyers coming in and using the platform. Good. We have razor and blade, which is a very known pattern, and you see it in many sectors. The razor and blade. So yeah, Gillette is very known. So in order to buy razor, you pay few money, but then to buy the blade, you have to spend a lot of money. This works also with the DeskJet printer, right? DeskJet printer. In order to buy the printer costs almost nothing. It's very very cheap, and then for the cartridges, you have to pay a lot of money. For Nespresso, also the same business model. It is called razor and blade. Nespresso, you buy the coffee machine, you are very happy to come back home with the machine, but then all of the spendings and all of the costs would raise afterwards because you have to pay a lot for these coffee pots, right? So, yeah, it's a very interesting business model. You find it in many sectors and areas. Then we have the freemium model. I put here, yeah, Skype, but yeah, in the meantime, who is using Skype after the pandemic? Nobody. Before the pandemic, I've been using only Skype. After the pandemic, yeah, nobody is using it. Yeah, who is using Skype here in the room? Yeah. Before the pandemic, have you been using Skype? I also not. So you are not using nothing, right? Yeah. Anyway. So we have here the freemium business model. What is freemium? The freemium is actually a word that is composed of two words, which is free and premium. So you are giving the product for free to one portion of the market, and for those who are requiring some premium services or premium subscription, they have to pay the full price. Yeah, and this business model is very important. Why? Because how could you convince people to use a software? And it is used very often in software. So you provide that software for everyone for free. Of course, with perhaps a limited application, some functions perhaps do not work. And in order to get the full functionality of that software, you have to be a premium customer, and therefore you have to pay the fees for the software. Look, it's like the insurance model on its head. In the freemium model, we have a small group of people, which are the premium customers, those who are paying for the full functionality of the software, that are subsidizing the big market, who are the users that are using the software for free, right? So these are the premium. And why I told you this is the insurance model on its head, because in the insurance model you have the majority of the users who are paying insurance that are subsidizing a small part of the users who are, let's say, getting some issues, let's say accident with a car. So the good drivers, they are subsidizing the bad drivers, let's say, like this, right? So it's premium and insurance, they are completely opposite. So the question is, why are they providing the product for free? Why are they providing the product for free? Because the value of the product increases, the more users are using that product. So it was also the case of Skype. Skype was given the product to everyone in order to have everyone installing the software on the computer. But if you would like to have specific services, like, for example, calling in the landline, so it was the model by Skype, you had to be a premium customer, you had to pay money. Okay? So this is the freemium model, free and premium. You have flat rate, which is just a subscription. Yeah. In the meantime, we have most of our subscriptions of mobile phones according to a flat rate, pay per use, instead of making the investment in a car, you can just share or rent a car and pay just for the mobility that you get. Yeah, by the way, there is an interesting company in the Netherlands. It is called Homey from the Netherlands. What they are doing here, they are providing washing machines to their clients. So the clients are not owning this washing machine. The ownership stays with Homey. And whenever you are using the washing machine, you are paying a certain fee to Homey. Let's say for €2.50, you are paying a certain wash session for Homey. And the thing here, why sometimes Homey is provided as an example in sustainable business models, because they say that, for example, if you put a program in the washing machine using very hot water, let's say at 70 or 80 degrees, the fees that you have to pay start to be higher and higher the hotter the water used is. And then it makes people really think about whether it is really needed, that hot water at 70 or 80 degrees. Perhaps still with 40 degrees, they can do also the same job, and then people will think twice because the price gets higher with the temperature, okay? So it is a business model that functions. Right? So they don't sell the washing machines, they do not provide with the ownership of the washing machine, but they get money per use. Whenever you use it, per session, per washing session, depending on the temperature, of course, you will get, you have to pay the fees. And then we have one example is the long tail business model. The long tail business model is very related to the Pareto analysis, right? It's very interesting business model. So this is the curve. If you are putting here on the x-axis, let's say products, according to a decreasing sales numbers or sales quantities, right? So it will you will have, this is the product with the highest sale, you have the product with the second highest sale. Yeah, I'm getting very quickly like this. So we will have a curve like this. And before, so many years ago, we have been doing business actually with the so-called blockbusters. These are the products that sell best for a company. So in general, a lot of discussion has been around what about just eliminating these goods which are selling very low, and they are generating a lot of cost for the company, but they are contributing only with a small part to its turnovers and sales. And the long tail business model focuses actually on this long tail here. These are the products that may sell very infrequently, but still you can make money with that. And an example of this is Lulu.com. Have you ever heard about Lulu.com? It's a very interesting model. So you know how the publishing model works. A publisher in general, let's say you're writing a book. So, because I did my PhD in Germany, and then I wanted to publish my PhD book. And then I went to a publisher. The publisher told me, you have to pay €2,000 in order to publish your own book. And it will be sold, of course, by the publisher, and the publisher will get money out of the book. But the publisher said, it is a scientific book. We don't know how much it will sell, so it is not other types of books they may sell in millions. Scientific books, they sell really not very much. So you have to buy yourself a certain number of books so that we can break even. And 2,000 euro, I think I got 40 or 50 copies at home, just giving. But this was the condition in order to publish the book. Otherwise, it was not possible. So you see, the break even is about 2,000 euros. So 40 or 50 copies. Now, Lulu.com is a company that makes print on demand. So they make money with only one single copy. And they do not print it. They print it only when the customer is ordering the book. So, by the way, in the meantime, Amazon is doing. They have their own printing services. You pay for the book. The book is not printed. Once it is paid, it will be printed and shipped to the client. So, and still, even if they sell from that book only one single copy, they can make money out of it. So this is called the long-tail business model, as compared what we call is the blockbuster business model. So it is coming from the movie industry, blockbuster, right? The movie that sells, mostly by a certain movie company, right? Okay. Any question on this? So what we have seen now the value, customer value, and then the business model from a canvas perspective, okay? So we have to keep this in mind. Now, we will go to another perspective on business models. And this business model perspective is extremely relevant. Because look, we start from the customer value, which is very abstract. Then we go to the business model, the canvas perspective. We try to understand the different elements of our business. And from the business model canvas perspective, we are going every time closer to the supply chain. We will look at the activity-based perspective or activity-based view on business models. And you'll see that this view, perhaps it is, you may not be familiar with, but it is so important, and it shows you directly how business models may influence the supply chain. Now, look, I will read this, but it will be very clear in a moment with an example. So, a business model is defined as an activity system in the activity-based field. The activity system is designed and enabled by a focal firm in order to meet perceived market needs. It encompasses activities conducted by the focal firm, partners, customers, etc. And most importantly, it has 4 dimensions. So, it could be the content. So here, what kind of activities the business model should have? The structure, it means the sequence of activities. Look, when you take the traditional business model, like selling electronics in the store, so you will have here the activity delivery to store. Then you will have the activity, perhaps, storing at the store. And then you will have the customer coming and buying the product, buying, let's say, the TV at the store. If you have, let's say, a customized product, let's say a customized computer, the first thing that you have to do is to buy. Right? And then after buying, then production will take place and then delivery. So you see, so the sequence of activities are very different here. Here, you produce, deliver, and store and buy. Here, you should buy it first, then production would be done. So the structure, always we talk about the sequence of activity. Governance, by the way, governance, when you hear this word, I know sometimes it could be confusing, but governance is nothing else than defining who is doing what. Governance is nothing else than asking the question, who is doing what? And then you have the value logic. Look, I would make now an example, and everything should be clear. I would like to ask you, what is that makes a cup of espresso excellent? I know in Italy, and I learned this, I'm 6 years in Italy now, you should never say espresso, you should say cafe. Espresso, we can say it in English, but if you would like in Italy to get an espresso coffee, you say, I would like to have cafe. Very important. Huh? Good. Now, what is it that makes a cup of espresso excellent? Come on, come on. It should be very easy for this class. The price for for the taste. Yeah, let's not. We don't talk about the price. What makes the coffee excellent that you get? It has a good taste, okay, but how to get that good taste? Roasting. So it is an activity, right? The roasting of the coffee. Roasting, I'm sorry. Roasting. Roasting the beans. Should be good. What else? The pressure of the machine, very important. Pressure in the coffee machine. How many bars you are pressing the water inside the coffee. Pressure in the machine. So I mean here. Yeah? The temperature, very important. Especially the temperature, the temperature inside, of course, because temperature and pressure, they relate to each other. But what is important, I do this in Italy, when you get an espresso coffee, it should be at 70 degrees. If it is below, they will not serve it to you, because if it is 60 or 50, it is too cold. So it should be really 70 degrees. And to have it at 70 degrees, the coffee maker, the one at the bar sitting to make the coffee, should be really good, well trained. So training. So it's not an easy. So training. Let's say training of the barman, or one who is doing coffee. Yeah. So of course we need also quality of beans. They should be good. Here the training. This is the personnel, of course. This is the machine. Yeah, I'm looking at our designers. What about having a coffee that is served in a well-designed cup? Yeah, the experience will be bad, right? So the design of the cup should be good. Now, you see how many parameters or how many activities go into making a good coffee. Now the question is, and you see here, Ili would like to provide good coffee. The question is, what kind of activities they should focus on in order to provide an optimal coffee experience to the customer. All of these parameters, quality of the beans, roasting of the beans, the machine itself, the training of the personnel, design of the cup, all of those have an important influence on the quality of the espresso coffee. So what kind of activities should Ili focus on? On all of them? Should Ili make all the machines? Should Ili also train the personnel? Should Ili, of course they do it anyway, roasting the coffee, beans, yeah, selecting the best coffee beans. So what kind of activities they should focus on? And it happens to be that this selection of activities, which activities we will focus on and which activities we will give to others in our supply chain, this is at the heart of business model decisions. Which things I will do internally and which things I will give to others. But it should be based on a conscious decision, on a well consciously made decision. And you see here that Eli focused on these gray ones. So R&D, coffee roasting, technical support for espresso machines, support and training for hotels, restaurants, and coffee, production of the pads, definition of cup collection. So this is what they are focusing on, but distribution, home coffee making, coffee cup manufacturing, Horeca coffee making, they do not focus on. So these are activities done by others, right? But this is what they say, we are selecting these activities and we will focus on. And this is the activity-based view of business models. Very, very important. It is different from the canvas-based view, which was rather a bit canvas-based, yeah, let's define a business model, etc. Here, we are approaching step by step the supply chain, right? So we are deciding what we will do and what we will give to others. And here, we will use a very known way, let's say, of representing supply chains by defining the different flows, information, physical products or services, and money flows. And I would like to go through this exercise with you. Imagine a company called Frixo that develops a technology for the reduction of friction between mechanical components. Who has studied mechanical engineering before? Yeah. You studied mechanical engineering, yeah. I remember you told me this one. What about friction in the mechanical engineering? This is something should be avoided. Why? Because we are just dissipating energy. We are transforming energy, valuable energy, just to heat that nobody wants to have, right? And then all of a sudden, so perhaps we will come up with a business model now, there will be an idea of reducing the frictions between mechanical components of 150 times. So you would reduce 15,000% the friction between mechanical components. So it's extremely nice technology, right? Could you confirm? Mechanical engineering? Yes. So your target industry is automotive, and the question is how to commercialize this new technology. So what I would like to ask you about, how would you commercialize this new technology, which obviously has a lot of added value. It reduces frictions between mechanical components. Any idea? I can tell you one thing, that this is an extremely difficult question. I don't know how it may be commercialized, even myself. But what I can tell you that there are different ways of commercializing it. And the startup has to select one of these approaches. Now, let's look at it in more detail. So we may have first type of business models, or how to monetize the technology. We can have an R&D focused model. And here it is about licensing. What does it mean, licensing? So here, the people who invented the technology will say, we will not sell anything. We will just sell, we will license our technology. Yeah, of course, we will file it at the patent office, we will get a patent, and then we will be licensing it. So the automotive manufacturers perhaps that would like to use our technology, they will be just licensing it by paying fees to us. So this is a business model, how to monetize the technology, right? The second way a machine producer model. They may say, okay, a technology, by the way, it is a solution. It is a patent. It is a written document. We can transform that written document, these ideas, into a machine. And our business model will be a producer model. It means that based on that technology, we will make a machine and we will sell that machine. So we sell this machine to the automotive manufacturers and then they will treat the components they produce with this technology, with our machines, and this way they will reduce friction. Or the service model. They may say, okay, no, we will make the machines, but we will not sell them. What we will do is, we will get the components from the automotive industry, and we will treat them on our site, and then we will send the components back to the manufacturing companies. You see? These are different business models. And I will show you now how these business models actually, they influence the supply chain. Look, I define 3 activities. The first activity is doing R&D activities. R&D, just R&D, just research and development and filing the patent. So having a document that protects your technology. A2 is manufacturing the machines, only manufacturing the machines. And A3 is using machines. So in the first R&D model, so in the first case, the R&D model, Frixo, this company, this startup, would just license the technology. So it is only doing A1. They are doing only R&D. So they are licensing the patents. And for that licensing, they are getting money from the original equipment manufacturers. But the original equipment manufacturers, they are doing A2 and A3. It means that they are manufacturing perhaps their own machines based on this technology, and they are using the machine. Now, look at the flows. We have patents in Europe. For case 2, we have Frixo doing now A1 and A2, because in Frixo, in case 2, it is a machine producer model. So they are doing R&D, of course. They are making the machines, selling the machines to the OEM. The OEM is using the machines, is A3, and then paying just for the machines, of course. Now, for the service model, Frixo is doing everything. You see that the choice of which activities they are doing is different from case 1 to case 2 to case 3. In 1, they are doing only A1 and 2. They are doing A1 and A2. And 3, they are doing all the activities. They are doing R&D. They are making the manufacturing of the machines. And they are also using the machines. So how does the process work now? The OEM is sending the components they produce for treatment. Frixo will treat them with their machines. They will send back the treated components, and then the OEM will pay, not for the machines now, but for the treated components, it means for the service. And by the way, I demonstrated now how the business model has an influence on the supply chain. Because each time you are using different business models, different monetization approaches, and each time you are getting a new supply chain. Look at the flows. The flows, they are different. And first you have patents in Europe, and the second you have machines in Europe, and then you have components for treatment, treated components, and yours. Of course, we could complicate this more by introducing third parties, and we would have, depending on the business model, we would have different supply chains. And what I try to demonstrate now is actually that BM has an influence on the supply chain. And you see it by means of this example. Very, very clear. Clear. Does it make sense to you? Okay. So always have in mind, business model has direct influence on the supply chain. Change the business model. Yeah, you may have big changes, you may have less or smaller changes, it depends. But there will be somehow always some changes. Good. Here it is just for, I will just show you this example. This is how we may use yeah, this way of representing business models. I call it the supply chain representation of the business model, or the activity-based perspective of the business model we have here. The Lightyear, you know, Lightyear car? Lightyear car is a car that has been created at the University of Eindhoven. I have a colleague of mine who is professor at the University of Eindhoven. He's very, very proud that his university has created this car. This car is operated 100% through solar power energy, because you have here solar panels that are on the roof of the car, etc., creating the energy required in order to operate that car. So you see how the business model works. So Light here provides a solar-powered car to the driver. The driver is paying 149,000. In the meantime, it is even more expensive. And then Lightyear is also providing intellectual property to partners. So they provide them the possibility to use their patents, etc., and the partners are paying fee to have access to the IP. So this is how the business model works. It gets money from two sides. One side is the driver for having bought the car, and the other side from the partners for having used the intellectual properties by Lightyear. Yeah, I have another example here, but I will not go through it because it's just showing how the different flows concretize a business model. Yeah, I give an example of ways, but you can have a look at it at home. Now, I would like to bring everything together. And it looks like this. So this is our framework. This is also what will guide us in the workshop. First of all, we have the customer value. So this is what triggers or what drives business model innovation. We have the business model. We have the canvas perspective. The canvas perspective enables us to represent, to draw the business model, at high level, let's say. But then we go to the activity system perspective, where we have to decide what are the activities done internally by the company, and what activities should be done externally by suppliers, for example, or partners. And here we have the business model design elements that are important, which are content, structure, governance, and value logic. And once we have done this, then the transition to the supply chain will be very easy. Because, and I showed you before, how we can transition by the example of the startup and the frictions reduction startup, how we can transition from the business model to the supply chain. And once we change the business model, customers may change their requirements, we can have an influence then on the supply chain, of course, through the business model. So this is our framework. Is it clear? Does it make sense? Okay, just to have, I have a bit of, to finish the theory part, I need perhaps 10 minutes more, and then I will introduce you to the workshop. Perhaps we can do 5 minutes of, let's say 7 minutes, okay? 7 minutes. We can breathe a bit, and then come back. Let's say 11, now 10, 11, 17, please, we continue. Please. You start.
Sí, voy a verlo.
Okay, we start. Please take your seats. I know today is a bit short with the breaks. Yeah, because we have to start also the workshop today. We cannot delay it for next time, and therefore, yeah, because we are very good at time. Okay, so I have to write it again here. So we have the business model having an influence on our supply chain. So if we innovate here, we can get here, we will get a new supply chain. We can get a new supply chain, right? So the question is, now how could we innovate our business models? And I will give you three guidelines. The first is so-called creating combinations, analogical thinking, and openness. So in general, I ask my students, how would you create new ideas? And the question perhaps that is very important to ask before is, what is an idea? What is an idea? What is an idea? An idea is just a combination of ideas. And it happens to be that this definition, it may be deceiving to you, it may be really deceiving, but it is very powerful from a practical perspective. What does it mean? In order to create a new idea, you should just combine things. And I have here a couple of examples. But in order to understand how important it is, what do you think? For now suitcases on wheels, it's something that is very evident. When you go to the airport, you find most of the people having suitcases with wheels, right? Is it true or not? Do you know when the suitcases with wheels were on the market for the first time? In the 80s. In the 80s. So the human mind took thousands of years in order to come up with the idea to put wheels on a suitcase in order to be able to carry the suitcase very easily. And by the way, the first suitcase with wheels in the 80s, and my family had one, it was so unstable because it does not have a good balance. So when you pull it, it can go on, it can just fall on one of the sides very quickly. And it was only in the 90s when French pilots come up with the idea of putting only two wheels on the suitcase to have this stable system that we have. And then now we came back to four wheels on the suitcase, and they are stable. But I don't know whether you remember, there were only two wheels on the suitcase, and there are some of them still now, and they are really very, very stable. So, and this situation, it is nothing less than combining wheels with suitcase. If you look at innovations like autonomous driving is nothing else than commercial car plus fast computers plus sensors plus maps plus street data. The internet itself is also a combination of many technologies together, and then they gave rise to the internet. So business model patterns, by the way, they can be combined into a new business model. So, and this is something that we have to bear in mind, that we can combine also the business model patterns. The only thing that is problematic when the number of combinations is high, how could we understand which combination is better than the other? So prioritizing the combinations could be a really challenge, right? A real challenge. Good. yeah, this is the business model patterns here. Yeah, some visuals about them, and the idea is, yeah, let's combine business model patterns to come up with a new business model. Yeah, before I told you about analogical thinking, actually, as I talked about the business model patterns of the automotive industry that could be transferred to another sector, and in that sector, we will create actually business model innovations, because what is very, very traditional, what is known in the automotive industry is not necessarily new in another one. Now, what we are using here when we are transferring a business model pattern from one area to another, we are using the principle of analogical thinking. Analogical thinking is very, very important. So what is analogical thinking? Is that we are looking at a similar situation, a similar sector, a similar area, where we have already a solution to a problem, and then we try to transfer that solution from specific situation to another area. By the way, engineers have been using for a long time the so-called bionics, which is biology and technology. Bionic, it is a combination of biology and technology, which is nothing else than making analogies or trying to get inspired from nature to solve technical problems. How to improve the aerodynamics of an airplane by getting inspired from the shark, right? And Airbus has done that in order to improve the aerodynamics of its airplanes, getting inspired by nature to solve a problem. So here the target is the engineering problem, the source is nature, and we're trying to transfer these solutions from the nature to the engineering world. Yeah, analogical thinking can be also implemented in the case of business models. Look, we have Airbnb, and here it is the abstract value proposition of Airbnb. Airbnb tells you, welcome at home, rent unique accommodations from local hosts in more than 190 countries. So if we abstract the business model of Airbnb, we find this one. Sharing of private apartment in the tourism sector, right? So we are sharing our private apartment with somebody else for tourism. Now, let's think of replacing private apartment with experiences. Sharing of experiences in the tourism sector, and we obtain the business model of a company called Variable. It is not existing anymore. It is unfortunate, but it is a very nice example, because Variable, what does Variable do is that it provides tourists the possibility of experiencing the city with the help of somebody that is living in the city. For example, yeah, you are in Milan, you know Milan very well, and then you, yeah, just an example, right? Yeah, perhaps another city, whatever it is, and then there is a tourist that would like to see the nice places of Milan, so you can accompany the group, and then of course you get some money from Variable, and then the group will have an insight into the city through the eyes of an insider, yeah, right, to the city, which is a very nice experience. So you see, this is the principle of analogy that is applied also to business needs. By the way, you can use these principles every time, because they are, yeah, how do you create new topics? I mean, for research, for engineering, combine things, how you create solutions, try to find analogies. So these are important ones for creativity and finding solutions to problems. And now if you don't come forward and you don't progress, what you can do, so first of all, for analogical thinking, I have to tell you something, and especially with respect to business models, you can use two principles. The first is called the similarity principle, and the second is called the confrontation principle. Don't try to read, you can do it at home. Concentrate yourself on me because I will give you the explanations there. Believe me, you don't need to read, you just need to hear me. Similarity principle. It is the principle that tells us to look for business models that are not distant from the sector in which we are working. I don't know if it is we are working in the restaurant industry. Perhaps we have to look at another sector, perhaps the food industry, which is very, very near to the sector in which we are operating. So if you are in the food industry and you would like to get inspired by business models from another area, when you implement the similarity principle, you don't look for telecommunication or for car, right? Similarity principle, it means you look at a sector that is near to the sector in which the company is operating. And then there is another principle, it is called the confrontation principle. And it is literally like this. And the confrontation principle, you ask yourself, how would Apple, so for example, you are in the food industry, and you ask yourself, how would Apple manage my business? So computer is confronted with food. So you may get inspiration here to improve your business model. This is the confrontation principle. So very important having in mind similarity principle could be useful sometimes, and sometimes in order to get perhaps radical ideas, radical innovation, you may go for the confrontation principle. It means looking for sectors which are far away from the sector in which your company is operating. Now, and this is the final one, I call it openness. It's very simple. Now, you apply the combination principle, you apply the analogical principle, perhaps you don't come forward as you want, you don't progress the way you wish. What you do is that you open up your processes. It means you look at ideas from somebody else. And this is what you do also. Perhaps you have a problem, an exercise, you try it yourself, and if you don't come forward, you ask your friend, you ask a colleague. So this is about openness. Of course, in order to be open, you have to share your problem with somebody else, right? Otherwise, you cannot be open. You cannot get the ideas from others. Openness, therefore, is an important technique in order to solve problems and to get new ideas. And these are the three principles that we will use also in the workshop. So this is the theory behind combinations, analogies, and openness. Now I'm done with the theory. So you have all the necessary or required foundations for the theory, from the theory in order to do the workshop. Now I will present you what should be done in the assignment. And you will see, of course, many things will make sense of when we will deal with the steps of the workshop because you have the required theories. By the way, you have on Weebit, I inserted a new folder. It is called Workshop. And there you find many files inside the folder. And then also the PowerPoint slide set that I will put now, I will go through now. And all of the explanations, of course, I will do some explanations, but still you can read all of the explanations in the documents. I have a document, it is the document number 6, where practically all what I will say now with respect to the workshop, you will find it summarized there. It will describe step by step what you will have to do in the workshop, what are the kind of questions you have to ask yourself, what are the kind of documents that you have to use, etc. Okay? Okay, our workshop is business model driven supply chain innovation. And first of all, you have the case of Exxon. Exxon is a company from the printing industry. Obviously, it has some problems. And yeah, this document is document 1 that you find in the, on Weebit. The case study is not too long. It is 2 pages. This is all what you have to read. So, but what you can observe is that it is dense with information, okay? So when all the group members read it, you will find that also everyone has a certain focus. So your may be different from the focus of somebody else, and therefore it is good when you read it at the beginning independently, and then you can discuss a bit what you understood from the case and what are the important points. Good, so this is what you have to do at the very beginning. Obviously, Exxon has some problems, and you have to think about how to get Exxon out of the problems. Then you have in activity 1, or task 1. So it has not to do with the activity-based perspective. This is activity 1 for the workshop. Workshop activity number 1 is very important, not activity-based. So what your task is that you read the document rules for supply chain mapping, and I would like that you start mapping the current supply chain of Exxon. So you read the document, the 2 pages, and you have these rules. So the rules are very simple. These are the rules that we did in class. You have, for example, here Exxon. It has its own customers. There are some suppliers, module suppliers or component suppliers. And I would like that you put the flows that you see represented in the case. Do not start or trying to think of flows, especially information flows. Yeah, to represent them if the case did not speak about them very, very explicitly. Okay? Of course, with respect to the money flows, it is very easy. So there is a product or a service delivery, then there will be, for sure, a money flow in the opposite direction. With respect to the information flows, I do not want that you make speculations with respect to which information could be there or could not be there. So if the case did not speak about it, so it means that perhaps it is just order placement, so it is an order. You don't need to represent it, because otherwise the supply chain map will get too messy, and this is not what we are striving for. We still would like to have a supply chain map that is providing us a good overview of how the supply chain functions without overloading it. Very important. Good. Now, once you have done this, you read the case, you do activity 1 by using this rule. I would like that you'll be specific a bit here. For example, product or good, you don't write product and good. If it is printers, if they are household printers or they are corporate printers, please write this is a corporate printer. If there is a service, it is a printing service or printer repair service, write printer repair service. So be specific. Don't just write service. Yeah, because otherwise it gets too generic. Have a certain level of detail corresponding to what you read in the case. Then in activity 2, I would like that you use the business model patterns. I gave you a document with about 32 business model patterns, or 30 business model patterns, I don't remember. More than 30. Yeah. What you have the explanation of the business model pattern, and you have some companies that are using these patterns. So it is about making the pattern closer to you. It is making it more tangible, right? So if you know what the pattern is about and you know what the company has implemented the business model before, so it makes it better understandable. But freemium and subscription, I think in this case, the examples I put here. So these are, I call them the business model cards. I put it um, as a PDF file, but when I'm doing this with practitioners, we are printing them on cards, and then there will be groups. Yeah, a group of 4, 5, 6 people working together, and somebody in the group says, yeah, subscription. How could subscription be appropriate, or how can be used in the case of our company? Does it make sense? Is subscription a valuable business model? Could we somehow adapt our business to use subscription? So these are the kind of discussions that they are done. And I also recommend you, because to my experience, that to make a small table, this is just for you. You don't send it to me because I'm not interested in that table. This is the process for thinking. So you can have patterns, definitely not. So you will disregard them. When you are discussing, you say, no, this will be definitely out of scope and we don't need it. And then you will have definitely yes. So this is a pattern you would like to have at the end for sure, in order to integrate it model by Exxon. And then you say here, don't know. You are a bit doubtful. You can put it here, that curve here, and then say, okay, we will go through the whole set of cards, and then we can come back afterwards. Because what I would suggest is that you don't take more, or you don't select more than 5 to 6 patterns. Because more than 5 or 6 patterns that you combine together to make the big business model of the company, it may not be appropriate, may not be used. So more than 5, perhaps less, but no more than 5 or 6, okay? Maximum. And therefore, I told you, first here, yeah, you have already your 5 patterns, and then those that you don't know, you say, no, we put them away. They are not interesting for us. So the task is to discuss the extent to which each pattern can support or not the digital value proposition of Exxon. Ask the question, what if Exxon adapts the pattern? Always, what if Exxon adapts? Obviously, Exxon may have adapted that pattern or may not have adapted that pattern. If it did not implement it, think of using it. Would it be helpful for the business or not? And think of scenarios how it may be implemented. Believe me, this is exactly what top managers are doing. I have done this workshop many, many times with practice, and this is the kind of exercise that they do, because they try to get out with their mind out of the business in order to see how other ideas coming from elsewhere could be transferred to their business. Right? So 5 to 6, no more. Very important. Okay, here you have some definitions, etc. But yeah. Now, after activity 2, so in the first, so let's recapitulate a bit. The first activity, you have the supply chain of the current supply chain of Exxon. You put it then on the side. So you represent that supply chain, the current one, you put it on the side. And now we tackle the business model development. The business model, we start with the patterns. We see what patterns from elsewhere could be helpful for the company. And then once we know the patterns, we would like to think about the new value proposition of the company, right? So when we will use the value proposition canvas, design the value proposition by filling out the template. Very important, and I really emphasize this point. For every job here, so especially for everything you have here, you should have something here. If you have a customer job here that is not fulfilled by a certain feature in the products and services, yeah. So mobility, we should here have a car, let's say, or we should have a bus service, or a renting, or car sharing, whatever. We have a pane for every pane here. And please also, if you present this if you present this, if you want, that this correspondence between pain and pain relievers and also gains and gain relievers should be clear. Because the gain, as I told you, I would like to get entertained, but this is what is the tangible feature that I endow my value proposition with concretely in order for my value proposition to create that gain. It is an entertainment system. So I recommend to my company to put an entertainment system in their cars in order for the car to provide that gain to the customers. Okay? If I have a pain here that is being in the bottlenecks every time in the traffic jams, how to relieve that pain? You cannot relieve it by making it better for customers. But this is to me too generic. You should say, by endowing our cars, our value propositions with a sophisticated navigation system, and you can also make a research about the navigation systems that are out there and say, this navigation system, we will be able to relieve the pain of our customers. This is a concrete feature in my value proposition that will reduce the pain, okay? This is the way you should be thinking. Yeah, this is just an example. Look, so the number, you have the check here. So this is I don't get into the example because everything that is checked here, it means that we have, here it is a pain, I have a pain reliever here. The ones that are with a cross, it means that have not been translated into the value proposition. So, for example, I may identify a certain pain by the customer, but I will not endow or equip my value proposition with a feature that relieves that pain. But it is conscious. I don't do it. The same for the gain relievers, for the gain creators and the gains. And then activity 4, you have the value proposition developed by the canvas. You have the business model patterns. And now what you have to do is you use the results of activities 2, the business model patterns, and activity 3, the value proposition, to design the full business model by filling out the template. By the way, it is not only about putting the business model patterns here. No. The business model pattern should guide your thinking. But in order to develop the business model canvas, you have, of course, to think about what are the customer segments. So the pattern does not give you the segment, the customer segments. The customer segments is your choice. Let's say household customers, corporate customers, as you will see. So this is your choice. If you would like, let's say, to eliminate a certain customer segment, this is your choice. Business model pattern will not tell you about this. So the distribution channels, if it is through, it is own logistics or it is third-party logistics, so the business model pattern does not tell you. It will guide you, to give you the whole frame, but still, you have to decide about which distribution channels you will be using. You see? So here, it should be concrete, right? The business model pattern as a guide, the value proposition, you can put it there. Please do not put the canvas here, right? By the way, if you look at the documents, I provided you the business model framework as a PowerPoint, not as a PDF, in order to use it. Another thing, if you would like to use the business model canvas by Osterwalder, no problem. I will not feel offended, okay? This is mine, the other by Osterwalder. No problem. You can use the other one. You say, I feel more comfortable with the other. You can use it. Yeah, you can download from the internet and then use it, or you can redraw it again. But yeah, what I would like that you do here at this step is that you try, based on the results of activities 2 and 3, to fill out the template. Okay? You see, and this is what I told you before. The creativity, more or less, is done with the business model patterns. You think about the business models that could be helpful for the company. And now here, what you are doing is that you are structuring your ideas by using the template. So I'm using the research results here that I told you about, the empty page. So the business model pattern, it's more or less just an indication. You think really very, very freely about the business model pattern, business models that could be helpful. Then you use, of course, the business model or the value proposition canvas. And here, it is about structuring your idea. You are converging all of your ideas together into the canvas to show them to the world. Okay? Then, once you have done that, so we have done now the business model patterns, the value proposition canvas, and the business model canvas. So this is the canvas-based view. Now I would like in activity 5 that we map the new supply chain. But very relevant is that we have to think about the activities that are required by the company in order to fulfill the new developed business model. You see, we are going the framework step by step. So we have the canvas perspective. Now we have the activity perspective. And very important, please provide the list of the activities that the company has to do, the high-level activities. There may be activities that the company has done in the past, but will not do anymore. So these are eliminated. Because of the new business model, there may be activities that will be included in the business model, and these have not been existing before. So you have to provide all of this, of these new activities, and say, okay, these activities will be done by Exxon, so they will be inside the business model of Exxon, or they will be outside. They will need a supplier, an external partner that will do them. So exactly the same reasoning what we have done for Illy coffee. Illy coffee, we have said, roasting, designing the cup, making the machine, etc. What they should do in the coffee industry. What are the kind of activities that they should put inside their system, their activity system, and everything else should be done by suppliers. And they have to choose also which suppliers would be doing this, because of course you cannot do everything on your own. Still, you have to decide what you should do on your own, what you should do internally. So in task 5.1, derive the new set of activities required for the new business model and decide whether these activities will be conducted by Exxon or executed by external parties or suppliers. And then activity 5.2. So we have done, okay, here there are customer problems, right? So there are some customer problems and they are very well described in the case. Then we use the canvas-based thinking of the business model. Yeah, we use the patterns, we use the business model framework, etc. Then we go to the activity-based view. The activities required in order to make this business model, right? And we decide about who is doing them. So this is the question of governance. Are they done by Exxon itself, or are they done by the supplier? And once we do that, we can go to the supply chain, right? And therefore, 5.2 is about the supply chain. Now, remember, the first task that we have done, it was about representing the supply chain map of Exxon. Now we have the business model, the new one. We have to think about how to transform that supply chain in order to get to one that is able to fulfill the business model. And this will result into a new supply chain. Actually, a supply chain innovation, a new structure, new flows. You have document number 6. Document number 6 in the workshop document. It provides you a summary of all the tasks that you have to do for the workshop. They are described really. I try to do it as detailed as possible. All the tasks, all the descriptions. It tells you what document to use, what kind of questions you have to ask to yourself, how you may work in the group. So for the summary of all workshop activities, please read the document, workshop guide and activities, and prepare a presentation with the main results of your group. So as you go, step by step, in the workshop, so you can do it online if you cannot do it together in at the university. Online goes very well. I did it also online with practitioners. It functions very well. If you'd like to do it together, you find a class or at the coffee or coffee shop. It works also very well. You have to decide about that. Okay. And step by step, you prepare the presentation. I also, in document 6, I provided the duration, average duration from my experience, how long each task will take. For example, task 1, which is the mapping of the supply chain, it does not go beyond 30 or 45 minutes, really. If you go more than 45 minutes, are really going beyond time. The business model pattern selection, it is 60 minutes, I think I provide. And it is really, so when we do the workshop offline here in presence, I give the participants 60 minutes, no more than 60 minutes. Please stick to this. Why? In order to be productive and to do the task as quickly as possible in order to free up your time for other things. I know my students, they tell me always they are busy, busy, busy. Okay, I give you here an indication about how much time it takes for each task. So if you do the workshop, I believe that doing everything, it will not take more than 5 hours. Okay, then for the presentation, you may coordinate 3-4 hours, and then you may make a bit of so it will not take a lot of time. Okay. Of course, if you need 1 week to do it, it's not productive. Try to stick to these average durations because they are very helpful. Now, structure of the presentation that you do. So you can start by showing the current supply chain network with key actors. You can select them, you show the selected business model patterns, and please explain why you selected them. Then you summarize the essence of the value proposition design. You can put the value proposition canvas, but please do not say, we have for this, we have this, we have for this. You will waste a lot of time. Try to summarize very quickly what the value proposition, the new one, is about. It's like when you go for pitching for an investor. You say, this is our value proposition, and you explain it in 30 seconds. If they don't understand it, you will not get the money. Okay? So this is how it goes. Then summarize the essence of the business model design. You can put, of course, the business model canvas on the slide, but believe me, I will not read one by one. I will listen to you and see if I understood your business model. Otherwise reading, I know the business model canvas can be very chaotic, and in general, I rely on what people say, because this is really what the business model is about. Then, list of activities, 5.1, and then map of the new supply chain network, and then show how the supply chain organization looks like. I'm really, of course, when I'm hearing your presentations, I would be looking forward to hearing that, to seeing that, how the supply chain looks like. And then explain a bit what are the main features of the new supply chain, its innovativeness, its innovative aspect, and then perhaps provide some potential challenges of the implementation of the new supply chain in practice. What are the kind of challenges that may be encountered when the new supply chain is implemented in practice? So it's not only about thinking about something that is really extraordinary, only to discover afterwards that it is not implementable, or we are not prepared for the problems and difficulties that may encounter us when implementing this. And therefore, please think about these challenges. The video presentation should have a duration of 8 minutes, and it is doable. I know it is doable. You may say, no, it is doable. It is doable. Okay? 8 minutes, everything is doable in 8 minutes. You can designate 2 or more members of your group to do the presentation. If you would like to present, all of you present is okay. Please, there are many actions perhaps that my students do that are time killers. Yeah, for example, and now I hand, students say, oh, and now I hand over to my colleague for telling us about the supply chain. And then the students say, as my colleague has said, this is waste of time. You should be coordinated in a way that when you stop, the next one knows exactly what to say. This should be smooth. This is the way I have to do a presentation, right? A reference list is required only if you rely on references beyond those mentioned in the lecture. So if you rely on references that are not provided in the lecture, include them. Provide in your list. Yeah, you may not say in the presentation, yeah, the list of my references. You put them in your PowerPoint PDF or PDF that you will submit, and that's all. I will see them. And, very important. Yeah, this is the new way of doing things. If ChatGPT indicator version on any AI is used in any form, this must be acknowledged at the end of the presentation and transcript, while mentioning the kind of support received. So if you get any support, look, I can tell you about my experience with ChatGPT. ChatGPT gets really very intelligent if you put very intelligent information inside. If the information is not, if the prompt is not so good, ChatGPT will not get very intelligent. So in order to be very good in prompting, it should be good in understanding your topic. Okay, so it will be okay to use it, but you have to tell me exactly how you used it and which version, and perhaps also, I think you can provide the prompt, that you used, that you provided to ChatGPT in order to get the, I don't know, whatever you want. Please put the names of all group members on the cover page of the presentation and the transcript. So, in order to avoid any issues, put all your names, and then, then it will be very fine. For the evaluation, I will look at the presentation, contents, oral communication, quality of the slides, respect of the allocated time. Some of my students may believe that the longer the presentation, the better. I tell you no. When you have 15 minutes for presentation, you should really use 15 minutes. If you have only 8 minutes and then you submit a 20 minutes presentation, it is at 8 minutes I will stop doing the video, okay? So it should be really at 8 minutes stop. So it is not in your favor to do it longer. And then please provide the transcript of your, so this is the report. The report is the transcript of the presentation, of the video. You should not think of other things. It's just the transcript of your presentation that, you can generate it also automatically. I don't know. And then review it because there may be some issues. But anyway, you have to provide it. The delivery of the video, the PowerPoint slides, and so in PDF, and the transcript is due by May 29th. I think I don't have more slides. Good luck. Any questions, any doubts, any? Questions, comments? No? 8 minutes, full presentation. Wait. Just there is a question here. Just one. So you can do whatever you want. You can cut the videos. You can do. So at the end, it should be 8 minutes. Okay. So the the video that I get at the end should be 8 minutes. Okay. So thank you for the attention and see you next week.